Now we hear about the curved shell of Proteus. Can someone tell me about the curved shell of Proteus?
Proteus
yeah.
was a sea deity who not only could change himself into various forms, but could also predict future events. In Francis Bacon's explanation of classical myths, Proteus represents physical nature and natural law. Shelley's motivation in having Proteus give Asia the wedding gift of a conch shell to proclaim the fall of Jupiter and the beginning of a new golden age may be explained partly by a legend surrounding the 3 conch shells in the Spenser's Faerie Queene, Book 1.
As told by Shelley's college friend and biographer Thomas Jefferson Hogg.
Oh, no, if you could keep reading because
Oh,
the
okay.
text is too small.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, it might be too small for you too. It was Book 1. I will, as told.
As told by Shelley's college friend and biographer Thomas Jefferson Hogg. Sir William de Shelley, one of the most famous of the paladins, carried about with him at all times 3 conchs fastened to the inside of his shield. When he blew the first shell, all giants, however huge, fled before him. When he put the second to his lips, all spells were broken, all enchantments dissolved. And when he made the 3rd conch, the golden one, vocal, the law of God was immediately exalted, and the law of the devil annulled and abrogated wherever the potent sound reached. And that's from Hogg, The Life of Shelley, edited by Edward Dowden.
Shoshana, I'm going to reach across the table.
No, that's okay.
I'm going to reach across the table to my friend Shoshana Cohn. When do we blow
the shofar?
Right, so let's talk about what the shofar is and when we blow
the
it.
ram's horn?
This is the ram's horn, yes. And we blow it at Rosh Hashanah to bring in the new year, and we blow it at Yom Kippur.
At the end.
At the end of Yom Kippur to say, now it's the end of great, repentance, and you can go on.
Now, Shoshana,
Yes.
did the Jews not know how to make a trumpet?
Well, the
They
ram's
had,
horn
right.
comes from the sacrifice to the temple. So you would go to the temple and you would sacrifice to God, to Adonai. And also, throughout, when Abraham was supposed to sacrifice Isaac, after he stopped, he goes and he finds a ram and he sacrifices the ram to God. So it's sort of this continuing.
Now, I would also say, and then that's great, thank you so much, an aspect of this, which is completely rhymes with what we're reading, is that the ram's horn is a very simple device. Now, yeah, the Jews did know how to make things that were louder and stronger to blow, but the idea was in this simplicity, in this basicness, there was somehow a direct connection to life and to earth and to humility. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur are times of great humility. And I would suggest in this piece of text, there is enormous humility. Okay, the cave is a simple dwelling. So that's...
I also think, and this will go on to our part, is that something that's simple and is also, it's something that has these 2 parts, just like to bring on life, we bring on death. As the ram's horn, it's bringing on death. As something simple, it's about creation and life. And it's those 2-sided pieces, which, when we get to our part, is sort of the same kind of idea.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Dan, John, Terry, take us through the next part.
I guess the narrative is moving along with Prometheus asking the spirit who is...
We're at like line 75, right?
Yes,
okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's following just the conch shell we're talking about, which the spirit comes into the most desired hour. So the most desired of the spirit of the hours. Prometheus asks that hour to kind of go down and alert mankind of this, celestial change taking place, right? This union between Prometheus and Asia. And then we get the introduction of Earth into the scene. Earth kind of gives the first of a pair of speeches she'll give. And this one's really interesting. She's essentially describing her own rebirth, right? Which is kind of like, as a concept, is really, really, really fascinating. And then we can come back and talk about this more, but I think there's 3 movements in our little section, right? So you have the conch shell going to Earth to alert humankind of the change, Earth describing her own rebirth, and then we get Asia's only line in this section, which is really, really strange given it's the union of Asia and Prometheus, and Asia's such a dynamic, interesting, for my money, the hero of the entire thing, and she's kind of reduced to these 3 lines, which are really, we could say things about that. But yeah, so I guess that's the narrative movement. If you guys want to talk about kind of what's happening linguistically.
You go ahead, John. What do you see?
I'm going to pass to Terry at the moment.
Okay. Well, I'm not sure. Well, I like that whole list of the wonder of rebirth and rejuvenation. I mean, she describes herself as being icy, withered, old, but it's not like a cycle that got restarted. You know, going from the withered, old, icy earth to the warmth of life. And
I think that's right.
you know,
No, I think that's very good. Dan, what else do you see that's really important to say right now?
I think it's interesting to note, we have 3 very different speakers in succession here, right? And arguably the 3 most significant in terms of the entire work, with Prometheus, Earth, and Asia. And I think that tonally they're so different, right? You have Prometheus literally starting with a directive, right? He's ordering the spirit and he's aggressive and assertive. The Earth, meanwhile, kind of reads like that introspective, subjective I poet, right? Like the Sylvia Plath or something. I hear, I feel, kind of like this very looking inward and very first person concerned, right? And then Asia, the opposite, right? Inquisitive, isn't concerned about herself, isn't ordering, is kind of asking this question that will be the catalyst for the very long speech that Earth gives at the end. And also that question, right, she's referencing to the idea of death. Wherefore speak the name of death, cease they to love and move and breathe and speak who die. That kind of, I mean, we've talked so much about the political of this, right? This foregrounds it even more so, right? Because Shelley is using these immortal figures to kind of, as a canvas for which to explore all these ideas. And Asia kind of says, it draws attention to the difference that no, life is different for the mortal and the immortal, right? Us as the reader need to have urgency that maybe these characters don't, right? And I think it's and Earth kind of, I think, speaks to it a little bit in that huge block of text that we're going to talk about next.
Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much. Okay, we are with you now, Sarah, Shoshana. Talk to us about this miraculous piece of text, which Sarah read so well for us.
Well, we had kind of discussed, as Shoshana hinted at, the idea of life, death, rebirth, resurrection. It kind of comes in these waves that was started by when Earth first spoke, like waking up, having the rebirth, going into talking about death, and Asia asking, like, why would you speak the name of death? And so, like in the beginning of the speech, it starts out kind of describing death and saying how even in death, like life continues. I mean, you have the idea here of ever living leaves and fruits and flowers, that even in the most barren and desolate places, things will still grow, things will still live. There is hope, which is another sort of theme that was brought out through here. And then I don't know if you want to comment on that beginning.
Well, we also took it, we thought about actual babies when we looked at it, and coming from the lines from the piece before. So when we're sort of dealing with babies in the scene in the lines before that you guys were talking about, it says, "And death shall be the last embrace of her who takes the life she gave, even as a mother, folding her child, says, leave me not again. And then it goes into sort of this long talking about death in all these ways, and we saw it as not just that it's a representative of, it's an actual baby, and the grief that she has of dealing with the death of that baby. And we talked about, it's like the five stages of grief. And she goes from dealing with the death and death and death to suddenly it's life, it becomes life-giving again. It becomes love-giving again. And so there's that acceptance at the end, and acceptance is what sort of allows the change to take place. So if we're just dealing with death over and over, and in that place of mourning, until you get to the place of acceptance, there's sort of no way to have another rebirth.
And it even kind of, as part of this like pain and everything, Earth even goes in to talk about, there is a cavern where my spirit was panted forth in anguish, while thy pain made my heart mad. And before, even in her first section, she had talked about how, there it is, all plants and creeping forms, etc., drew disease and pain from her bosom, drawing poison of despair. And when you think about Greek mythology and the idea of Gaia, Saturn, Uranus, I think, ate all of the children as she gave birth to them, until she hid Zeus, Jupiter in the folds of the earth, and hid him so he could grow and then overtake Uranus, Saturn. So it's almost like all this pain being held in that can't escape. And even in the second speech, it's talking about how that pain, that anguish of their spirit, made her heart mad, her pain, made other people mad, causing war and faithless faith, just insane craziness.
So what kind of work does this speech do in the poem? And here I would open this up to anyone. What kind of work does it do? What does it tell us about the world? What does it tell us about Shelley's poem?
I think it says, to me at least, that there's pain and suffering, but there's also hope, which is outlined in this last bit.
Which words do it for you, though?
I have it underlined. The torch of hope that even can go into the grave and across night of life. No matter how bad things can get, how awful it seems, even in death, the world continues on. There is always hope. There is rebirth. There is new life.
Shoshana?
And for me, it's the stage directions. It says, a spirit rises in the likeness of a winged child. And the vision that I had is of an angel and that sense of resurrection. And of course for me, because I studied Jesus imagery, it was like the idea of, your child, that son being resurrected and becoming Christ, becoming a savior, but coming above that death, and the idea that we think that we can't fight death, and here's a way that we can. So it's just those stage directions.
So if you had to I'm so sorry, Dan, I know you have something to say here, and say it in a minute. If you had to summarize the feeling about how death has changed here, what would you say? Do you want to take a minute while Dan says Dan's thing?
I just, the lines that Sarah pointed us to, the torch of hope into the grave, I think they're really interesting. I agree with what she said about kind of the perennial nature of hope in Shelley's world, but also the end of that section is, the torch of hope into the grave across the night of life, as thou hast borne it most triumphantly to this far goal of time, which is, there's two different kinds of hope here. There's the hope for immortals, and hope for mortals is different because hope is inherently a construct of time, right? Prometheus doesn't have to worry about bearing the torch into the grave because he is immortal, right? So time functions differently for him. It takes 3,000 years, and that's fine, right?
he's not veiled by death. Is that the line
Yeah,
earlier?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, right? So hope is almost more of a challenge for people like us who live in a temporal world, right? Like we can have hopes that will very likely never come to fruition, right? So it becomes almost more courageous or something like that to maintain hope when there's no guarantee of its realization. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I guess this sort of goes to death's not an ending. And like you said, if they're immortal, it's not really death.
And
It's
it says the far goal is time, not death.
Right. And actually, I'm trying to think of where this is from. I'm sure it's from some dumb movie. The idea that you're constantly stuck in time, that there's something, it's probably from the Dracula movie, that there's nothing that you can do, that you're trapped by time because you have no death. So death is almost, to them, death is sort of beautiful and something they fantasize about as we fantasize about life. So it's this constant, again, it's like kind of constant circle.
And you can even kind of bring this temple into that, the temple that was built out of the pain and anger and everything. And then even, it's almost like in death, like, kind of like you were saying, like at the end of it, it's an empty temple. It's been empty for a while, but even those marble, that has like living imagery, even the things that are just stone in there are living and filling the temple with smiles and everlasting love.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. Your efforts are appreciated both by me and by all the people who get to share this with us.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for